I was at the McDonald's with two friends from school, Mason and Tyler. We weren't doing anything interesting, just eating cheap food and killing time before heading home. It was noisy, crowded, and bright in the way that fast food places always are. I remember being tired because I hadn't slept much the night before, and all I wanted was to sit there and let the hours pass without talking too much. The three of us started messing around with our phones, taking stupid selfies like everyone else does. Nothing special. I leaned back on my chair trying to shake awake while they argued about poses and filters. I wasn't paying much attention to anything around us. I didn't feel strong or safe. I was just trying not to fall asleep on the table. Before anything happened, there was this quiet moment where everything around us felt normal, like the kind of moment that never warns you the day is about to turn into a complete nightmare. Mason held his phone up again, and both of them shoved closer to get into the frame. I barely moved. I didn't care about the picture. That's when the trouble started. There was a man sitting behind us, alone, eating slowly. I hadn't looked at him before. I didn't even notice he was there. But Mason lifted his phone again, and just as he angled it, the man stood up. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't look angry at first. He just stepped beside our table and stared at Mason's phone like it was something dangerous. He said he didn't want to be in any pictures. His voice wasn't loud, but there was something in the way he said it that pushed right into my stomach. Not a threat, just the rigid tone like every word cost him effort. Tyler laughed under his breath, not even at the guy, just out of habit, and kept tapping the screen like he didn't hear anything. Before anything else happened, there was this pause where the man kept staring at us, and nobody moved. People around us kept eating, the fryers kept hissing, and the music kept playing like nothing was off. But his eyes didn't leave us. I felt pressure in my chest. Not fear exactly, more like I suddenly remembered how breakable I was. We didn't move, and we didn't stop. And that pushed him over the edge. The men shoved our table with both hands, spilling our food across the floor. It wasn't a small push. It knocked me sideways and the whole tray slid off, fries scattering everywhere. Mason's phone flew out of his hands and skidded across the tiles. The sound was loud enough to turn a few heads, but not enough to make people stand up. Not yet. I tried to sit up, but he grabbed me by my shoulder and pushed me back down. His grip hurt immediately. I wasn't strong enough to fight him, and I didn't even think about trying. My legs felt weak, and the only thing I managed to do was slide further down the seat. Mason reached for his phone, and the man kicked it out of reach like it offended him. Before anything else escalated, he leaned forward over me. His breath was heavy and uneven. He didn't blink. I felt every second stretch out like someone slowing down a video. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I kept waiting for someone to come over, but nobody did. People were watching from far away, not close enough to help, just close enough to stare. Then he attacked. He grabbed me by the front of my hoodie and yanked me up so hard, my neck snapped forward. My feet barely touched the floor. He slammed me against the edge of the table he'd just knocked over. I couldn't breathe for a second. My chest dropped back into the seat and the impact drove the air out of me. Tyler tried to say something, but the man swung out his arm and hit him across the face, sending him into the wall. I couldn't get up. My legs wouldn't cooperate. My arms felt slow and useless. All I could do was watch him turn back toward me. He pulled me by the hair this time, dragging me halfway across the floor. The tiles scraped my palms when I tried to hold on to something. My knees hit the ground hard and I couldn't get my balance. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't acting like someone who just lost control. He was focused, like hurting me was something he had practiced. Before he struck again, he paused over me. Not to think, not to calm down, just to look. His face didn't twist in anger. It didn't show anything. His eyes were empty in a way that made my skin crawl. I felt trapped under that stare, like nothing I said or did would matter. He lifted his arms slowly, almost checking his own movement, and for a second, I actually hoped someone would yell, step in, anything. That didn't happen. He punched the side of my head hard enough to knock me sideways. The sound rang inside my skull. I tried to crawl backward, but my elbows didn't hold. He grabbed me by the back of my hoodie again and dragged me toward the middle of the floor where everyone could see. I heard someone yelling for him to stop, but it came from far away, like from outside the building. Mason tried to grab the man's arm from behind, desperate, but the guy threw him off like he weighed nothing. Mason hit the ground and stayed down. I couldn't keep my eyes focused. The room kept tilting. I tried to pull away, but he pinned me with his knees against my ribs. The employees finally noticed the intensity of what was going on. One of the cashiers shouted for the manager, and I heard someone in the kitchen calling the police. He twisted my arm behind my back, pressing harder every second, and I felt something stretch in a way it shouldn't. I let out a sound I couldn't control. He didn't react. Before he shifted his attention, there was this tight moment where I saw him stop moving. Not freeze, not hesitate, just stop like he needed to pick a new target. His head turned slightly toward the counter where two workers were standing. Their hands were shaking, and one of them looked ready to run. That was all he needed. He let go of me and charged straight at them. I tried to sit up, but my vision blurred again. I could only watch as he grabbed one of the employees by the collar and slammed him against the soda machine. The cups crashed to the floor. The other worker tried to hit him with a tray, but the man swung his elbow back and sent him stumbling. The employee he held tried to push against him, but the man didn't even flinch. He kept hitting him over and over, each strike heavier than the last. The worker's legs buckled, but the man didn't stop. Nobody who tried to approach made it more than a step before backing off. He kept going until the employee fell limp in his arms. I couldn't stand. I could barely lift my head. All I saw was the man tightening his grip around the worker's throat. Sirens finally broke through the chaos. The doors swung open and officers rushed in. The man didn't drop the worker right away. He turned his head toward the sound, his chest rising fast but steady, like he wasn't worried. The police shouted commands at him, stepping closer with their weapons drawn. Before they reached him, I felt a moment of rising panic. The kind where you expect him to pick the nearest person and make everything worse. He shifted his stance slightly like he considered something I didn't want to imagine. His grip tightened around the worker on the floor. Then the officers hit him from the side, tackling him down. His arms were forced behind him, pressed to the ground. He fought back, not in a wild way, but with the strength of someone who didn't care about breaking anything in the process. It took 3 officers to pin him. One of them kept shouting for him to stop resisting. They eventually got the cuffs on him, dragging him up from the floor. The worker he nearly killed was carried away by 2 employees. I saw his face only for a second. He wasn't moving. The man, Stevens, kept his eyes forward as they hauled him outside. I found out who the man was a day later, lying in the hospital bed with my arms strapped and my ribs wrapped. A nurse left the TV on and his face showed up on every channel. His name was Steve Stevens. He wasn't just some random guy at a McDonald's. He was the man police had been hunting since the day before. Steve Stevens is known as the Facebook Killer after murdering an unknown elderly man and uploading the video to social media. In 2017, he was arrested at a McDonald's after employees recognized him and detained him later, handing over his food. Stevens left in his car before the police arrived, and after a brief chase that same day, shot himself.
My name is Jose, and I'm the one who walked out of that place alive. I didn't walk out because I was brave or because I did something special. I walked out because my body decided not to shut down when everything around me was turning into a crime scene. For years, people asked me to talk about it, but I never managed to tell a straight story. This is the closest I've ever been to doing it. I used to work the night shift at a McDonald's in Nashville. I wasn't trying to build a career there, I just needed money. The place was always quiet after closing, the kind of silence that made every noise sound wrong. I usually cleaned, stocked, and waited for the hours to pass. Nothing ever happened. Nothing ever changed. That night started like any other. The crew was tired, talking about going home, about the food, thinking about sleep. I was wiping down a table, trying not to drag the shift any longer than it needed to be. Outside, the parking lot was empty, except for a few cars. It looked normal enough. I didn't have any warning. No strange vibes, no sense of being watched. The day didn't feel special or marked. It just felt like another late shift. And then it didn't. We were already closing when I heard footsteps outside. At first, I thought it was someone who forgot their order, or maybe a car pulling in late. The sound wasn't loud, but it was steady, like someone circling the lot. I tried not to care, but the steps didn't fade. They got closer. One of the guys went to take out the trash. He pushed the back door open and stepped into the alley. The moment he left, the air inside the restaurant felt heavier, like we had just lost whatever thin layer of safety the walls gave us. I kept waiting for him to come back with the bin, complaining about the cold. But he didn't. We waited longer than usual. Somebody muttered that maybe he was messing around, taking a smoke break that he wasn't supposed to take. No one volunteered to go check. I don't blame them. None of us wanted to step outside with those steps still echoing in our heads. Then there was a knock at the front door. Calm, slow, repetitive. Whoever was outside wasn't trying to break in. They were waiting for us to open. We gathered near the front counter, trying to decide if we should answer. There was a gap in the blinds, and one of the girls peeked through. Her breath caught in her throat, and she stepped back without speaking. That alone was enough to make everyone freeze. Before we reached her to ask what she saw, the knock came again. Same rhythm, same patience. I tried to stand behind someone taller, but my legs didn't cooperate. I didn't feel brave. I didn't even feel scared yet. I felt cornered before anything even happened. The tension built slowly. No threats, no shouting, no pounding on the door. Just the steady presence of someone who knew we were inside and wasn't in a hurry. We didn't hear cars. We didn't hear movement beside the footsteps shifting weight. Then the knocking stopped. The silence wasn't a relief. It made everything worse. Everyone strained their ears in different directions, trying to track any sound outside. Seconds later, the back door burst open. He stormed in holding a gun and wearing a face that didn't match the world. I didn't recognize him that night. But later, I learned his name was Paul Dennis Reed, the fast food killer. But the version of him that entered wasn't like the man in the news later. This one twitched, flinched at noises we couldn't hear, moved like he was fighting something inside his skull. He pushed one of the managers to the ground and ordered all of us to line up. I ended up near the middle, barely able to keep my legs straight. He kept scanning every corner of the room like he was expecting someone to jump out of the walls. The tension rose again when he walked behind us, muttering something to himself, gripping the gun like it was an extension of whatever was tearing his brain apart. He paced back and forth, tapping the metal against the tables. No pattern, no logic. The others tried to stay quiet, but their breathing gave them away. Then he pointed the gun at the first person in line. Before he did anything, he paused. He didn't do it out of mercy. He paused because something inside him shifted, like a thought that redirected his violence. He looked at the ceiling, at the walls, at us again. His eyes jittered between us so fast that it felt like he couldn't pick a target. We stayed frozen. No one dared move. The silence stretched so long that my eyes started ringing from the pressure. I kept wondering if I would hear the shot that killed me or if everything would just stop. Then he grabbed the manager closest to him and dragged him toward the freezer. That was the moment I knew things had gone beyond the robbery. There was no strategy, no demands, just chaos directed by a man whose mind was slipping. We followed his orders because there was nothing else we could do. He forced us into the freezer area, then changed his mind halfway and pushed us back out. He couldn't stick to a plan. His behavior wasn't steady. It swung from calm to violent in seconds. He aimed the gun at another coworker. His hands were shaking, not with nerves, but with some inner tension he couldn't control. His breathing was fast, almost animal-like, like he was reacting to a danger no one else could see. Then, without warning, he shot the first one. The noise broke something inside the room. People screamed. Some fell to the ground. Others froze. My body reacted before I could think, and I dropped to the floor. I didn't check if I had been hit. I just stayed down because that gave me a chance. He shot again and again. Each shot cracked through the building and cut off another voice. I kept my face down against the tile, hoping the blood around me wasn't mine. The tension didn't disappear after the shots. It turned into something worse. The room went silent except for his footsteps. He was checking bodies. He wasn't rushed. He wasn't panicking. He was following some internal rule only he understood. I kept my breathing as shallow as possible. Blood was spreading under me, warm against my skin. I didn't dare move to wipe it. I didn't dare flinch when something heavy was dragged nearby. His footsteps got closer, slow, calculated. He stopped next to me. I could smell gunpowder and sweat dripping off of him. He stood for a full second, maybe two, long enough that I felt every beat in my chest pushing against the floor. I knew that if he crouched, I was done. He didn't. He muttered something under his breath about signals and watchers. None of it made sense. Sounded like he was arguing with someone in his head. He walked away to the right, then circled back as if uncertain whether to shoot me again. Then he reloaded. The sound of the magazine sliding in almost made me jerk, but I held still. He shot the last survivor beside me, the one who wasn't fully down yet. The sound echoed against the walls and made my ears ring harder. I waited. I didn't know for what. Maybe for him to leave. Maybe for a chance to crawl somewhere else. My face was pressed into a puddle that wasn't mine, and the smell made it hard to keep my stomach steady. Finally, his boots moved toward the back exit. The door slammed. Silence returned. But it wasn't real silence. It was the kind that still holds the echo of everything that just happened. I stayed on the floor longer than necessary because I didn't trust my body to move without making a noise. I got up slowly. My legs barely responded. Everything around me looked wrong. The walls, the tables, the bodies. I didn't let myself look at their faces. I stumbled toward the front counter, slipping twice on the floor. The tension rose again when I heard movement outside. I thought he had come back. My chest tightened so badly I couldn't breathe. I crouched behind the counter, shaking uncontrollably, waiting for the door to open. But it wasn't him. It was sirens. Someone outside had seen him leave and called the police. Flashing lights filled the room. I tried to stand, but my legs buckled, and I hit the floor. Officers came in, shouting orders, but all I heard was noise. They carried me out. I remember looking back once, just to be sure he wasn't chasing me. My brain refused to calm down. Even in the hospital, when doctors checked me for injuries, I expected Reed to burst through the door. That didn't stop for months. They caught him later, Paul Dennis Reed. The man who walked into our McDonald's wasn't just a criminal. He was already on a trail of killings across fast food places in Nashville. He had murdered co-workers at Captain D's. 2 girls from a Baskin-Robbins. He didn't rob for money. He moved with a kind of broken logic, driven by paranoia and delusions that twisted every thought he had. People later said he wanted the world to notice him. Others said he thought the government was tracking him, pushing him toward violence. Some claimed he believed he was cleansing places that hid signals only he could detect. I don't know which version is true. I only know the one that stood inside my workplace, twitching like his mind was splitting him apart. He died in prison years later, not by execution. His body gave up before the system did. I lived. I don't know why. It wasn't courage. It wasn't strategy. Survival just happened to me. But every time I close my eyes, I see him standing over me, deciding whether I was worth another bullet. Paul Dennis Reed, Jr. known as the fast food killer, was an American serial killer sentenced to death for 7 murders committed during 3 robberies at fast food restaurants. His robberies were notable for the brutality of his attacks and for the torture of his victims.
I came back from work later than usual, tired and trying to keep my eyes open. My kid, Alan, was in the back seat asking nonstop about the toy inside the Happy Meal. He was excited and I just wanted him to eat and go to bed. We parked outside the house and he ripped the bag apart before I even unlocked the front door. He froze for a second, holding something that didn't look like a toy at all. He handed it to me with this confused look. It wasn't plastic, colorful, or safe for a kid. It was a metal piece shaped like a torn dog tag. The edges were sharp, scratched, and filthy. There were no logos or cartoon characters, just a faded letter carved into the side. It didn't belong in a meal for children, not even by accident. I kept staring at that thing, annoyed at first, but something about it made me put it aside instead of tossing it. I didn't know if it was dangerous, but it definitely didn't come from the normal toy line. I checked the bag again, thinking maybe it was a mistake by the staff. Alan didn't care anymore. He had fries, and that was enough for him. I told myself I'd go back to the restaurant after dropping Alan at school the next morning. It felt like the right thing to do. But I didn't really understand why I felt so tense keeping that metal piece inside the house. It wasn't fear, but it pushed against my nerves in a way I couldn't explain clearly. The next day after leaving Alan at school, I kept the metal piece in my pocket and drove to the fast food place. I wasn't expecting anything dramatic. I just wanted them to take the thing back, apologize, and hand me the proper toy. The place was almost empty, only a couple of workers cleaning tables. I approached the counter and explained the issue. The employee gave me a blank stare, walked to the back, and came back with a manager who looked confused. He checked the kid's toy box, checked the stock list, then stared at the metal piece. He said they didn't have anything like that in their shipments. He suggested someone might have messed with the bags. I didn't like how dismissive he sounded. Before I could reply, someone pushed the door open behind me. A man walked in, tall, with a heavy build, wearing a dark jacket. He didn't order anything. He just stood there scanning the place like he was looking for something missing. His eyes landed on the metal piece in my hand, and I felt something tighten in my chest. I kept the conversation short after that. I just wanted to leave. The manager apologized again, but his voice faded as I realized the man was stepping outside at the same time as me. I walked toward my car, trying to pretend I didn't feel him behind me. Just before getting into the car, I felt the air around me get too still, like everything stopped listening for a moment. I didn't turn around at first, but my fingers slipped on the door handle. I knew he was close because I heard his shoes scrape the pavement. He spoke, calm, like he had practiced that tone. "That wasn't yours. They put it in your bag by mistake." My throat tightened. He wasn't asking for it. He was telling me. I didn't answer. I got into the car and locked it fast. He didn't bang on the window or yell. He just stood there staring at me through the glass while I turned the engine on and drove away. That silence was worse than any threat. For the rest of the day, I kept replaying his voice. It had no emotion, no anger, no fear, just certainty. I tried to shake it off. I picked Alan up from school, made dinner, acted normal, but when I went outside to take out the trash, I noticed a car parked across the street. Same color as his jacket, same length, lights off, engine off. Before anything happened, I stood there holding the trash bag, my pulse speeding up on its own. It felt like someone was waiting for me to make one wrong move. The street was quiet, every house dark except mine. The stillness didn't feel natural. As I stepped closer to my mailbox, the car door opened. I didn't see his face, only the shadow inside the cabin shifting. Not a word, not a sound. The door closed again. I dropped the trash bag by accident, picked it up fast, and went inside. Alan didn't notice anything. I tried to keep my breathing steady so he wouldn't ask questions. I barely slept that night. Every time a car passed, I sat up. Around 3 a.m., I heard soft steps outside near the window. When I forced myself to look, I saw him walking out of my yard like he had just inspected something. No rush, no guilt, like he had every reason to be there. The following days turned into a routine of fear. Before anything happened, the tension kept building every single morning. I'd wake up feeling watched. Even simple tasks, like opening the curtains, felt like I was stepping into a trap. Alan noticed I was acting different, but I told him I was just tired. He appeared everywhere, near the school parking lot, at the gas station, standing at the far end of the grocery store aisles. He didn't approach me again, but he didn't hide either. He wanted me to see him. He wanted me to know he was close. Always close. One night, I heard the sound of something hitting the side of my house. Before checking, I froze near the living room door, listening for more. There was no wind, no animals, just that single hit, followed by slow dragging steps moving along the wall until they faded. I held my phone tight, ready to call the police, but something stopped me. I didn't want him to see me panicking next to the window. The next morning, I found small scratches near the back door. Not deep, not violent, but intentional. Like he wanted to let me know he could open it if he tried harder. I stayed inside the house all day, checking the windows every few minutes. He didn't show up. That quiet drove me even more restless. By the time I finally went to the police station to report him, I was exhausted. I gave them his description, the plate number I memorized, everything I could. They told me they'd patrol the area. They told me to stay calm. The moment I stepped outside the station, those words lost all meaning. Before reaching my car, the sidewalk felt too empty. No cars passing, no people walking, just silence thick enough to make each step louder than it should be. I kept checking my surroundings, but nothing moved. When I reached the car door, someone grabbed my arm from behind. Another hand covered my mouth. My knees almost buckled. They didn't give me time to scream. Two men dragged me backward while the man from the restaurant opened the trunk of a car nearby. His expression didn't change at all. The tension before they threw me inside was unbearable. I could hear Alan's name in my head like a reflex, and every sound outside felt like a countdown. I kicked, twisted, tried to break free, but they were stronger. They pushed me into the trunk and slammed it shut. The car started moving fast, turning sharply. I hit my shoulder against the metal wall inside. I tried to scream, but the sound drowned under the engine. I felt every bump on the road, the car swaying as if the driver was losing control. A few blocks later, the car jerked violently. Tires screeched. There was a crash so loud it shook my entire body. The trunk bent inward. The car stopped against something hard. I could hear one of the men groaning in pain. Someone opened a door and ran away, limping. The others didn't move. A long moment passed before anything happened. My breathing was rough, and I forced myself to stay still because every small sound felt like it could attract whoever was still alive. The street was quiet again, except for a faint hiss coming from the broken engine. I started hitting the trunk from the inside, yelling for help. It hurt, but I didn't stop. After a few minutes, I heard voices. Firefighters. They cut the metal carefully, pulling the trunk open. They lifted me out, checking my injuries. I was shaking so hard I couldn't talk at first. Ambulances arrived. Police arrived. The driver's seat was smashed forward, and the man who had followed me for days was still inside, barely conscious but clutching his side like he knew his time was running out. The officers shouted orders, rifles raised as he tried to crawl out. He reached for something under his jacket. He fired once, hitting a police car door. The officers responded immediately. He didn't get a second chance. His body fell against the pavement and his hand finally let go of the gun he kept hidden the whole time. I learned who he was a week later after giving my statement again. His name was Curtis Hale. He wasn't a random stalker. He was involved in drugs, weapons, and every type of illegal job police could list. He had been on the run for months. The metal piece I found wasn't a tag or a toy. It was part of a keychain he used to carry everywhere, something the police linked to a warehouse raid he escaped from the night before I got that Happy Meal. He must have dropped it while hiding near the restaurant's dumpsters. Someone probably scooped it into the wrong bag without noticing. He thought I had it on purpose. He thought I'd turn it in. He thought I was a threat. Even when I didn't know anything, he believed I did. The only surviving man from the crash ran for 2 days before being caught. He confessed to everything. They were planning to take me somewhere remote because they didn't trust me to stay quiet. I gave the metal piece to the police and never touched the subject again. Curtis Hale died thinking I was his enemy. I didn't even know his name until he was gone. I just wanted a toy replaced.